Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with the mighty Jingles. Now, this is not a game that I had actually anticipated being able to show you. This one was sent in by Pricie Gaming, who's a World of Warships community contributor. He said, I've had this amazing game in the Farragut, a tier 8 battle, and I absolutely kicked ass. I said, that sounds pretty interesting. Send it on over. He said, oh, it's from a previous version of World of Warships though. Yeah, I haven't kept my previous versions of World of Warships, so I was unable to watch the replay. Well, PointyHairedJedi to the rescue, another World of Warships community contributor who has kept his previous versions of World of Warships, and was able to record the video footage for me, stick it on Google Drive so I could download it, and actually have a look and see what all the fuss was about. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it was worth the trouble. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the American destroyers. I love the Clemson, I love the Nicholas, I think the Farragut is fantastic. The Mayhan's a bit disappointing at tier 7, at least until you get it fully upgraded. The Benson at tier 8 is fantastic, the Fletcher at tier 9 is amazing, and the gearing at tier 10 is just ridiculous. But I've always considered that the Farragut here at tier 6 was certainly the high point of the American destroyer line at the low and mid tiers. She's basically just a Nicholas that's been improved in almost every way that matters, with the exception of the health pool, which for some strange reason is actually less. A fully upgraded Nicholas can have 13,100 health, whereas an upgraded Farragut with either the B or the C hull only has 11,500. Hang on, Jingles. This Farragut clearly has 13,600 health. Well, Pricie's obviously running the survivability expert skill to give extra health to his little destroyer, and that's not a bad idea on this ship, and in fact Pricie is going to be very, very grateful for that particular commander skill before this battle's over. So the Farragut has lower health than the ship that preceded it. However, that's really the only bad news. In most other respects, the Farragut is at least a little bit better than the Nicholas. Her speed isn't amazing, but it's not bad. Her surface detection range, her concealment isn't amazing, but it's not bad. The torpedoes are better than those of the Nicholas, and not least because they're centerline mounted, so they can fire over both port and starboard sides. But they still have terrible range, although they are a lot faster than the torpedoes on the Nicholas. You're not able to stealth fire in open water from an American destroyer until you get to the Benson at tier 8. And she has better firepower. She has 5 guns, an improvement over the Nicholas's 4. Now, her anti-aircraft firepower is bad. And let's not forget, this is a tier 8 game, and that's a tier 8 carrier on the enemy team, so Pricie is very, very grateful that the tier 8 carrier on his team is sending the fighters ahead to sweep for enemy contacts. You can upgrade the defensive anti-aircraft firepower on the Farragut by fitting the 3rd hull upgrade option, but you lose one of the guns. Most people don't bother with it because the outstanding factor on the Farragut is the firepower. Those 5 guns give this ship the highest damage per minute of any tier 6 destroyer in World of Warships. Even before you start adding any fancy upgrades or commander skills, these guns have a base reload of 4 seconds. That means each of these guns, and it has 5 of them, is putting out 15 shots every minute. But he is still just a tier 6 destroyer, with torpedoes that only have a 6.4 kilometer range, and this is a tier 8 battle, and there are 3 tier 8 battleships, 1 tier 8 carrier, a tier 8 cruiser, and 1 tier 8 destroyer on the enemy team. On the bright side, there is no radar. The only enemy tier 8 cruiser is an Admiral Hipper, and while it has fantastic hydro, it doesn't have radar, which means that he can smoke up in open water here and start punishing that enemy shores. The Soviet tier 7 cruiser. High explosive at first, and now that the shores is showing the broadside, he switched to the armor piercing, and somebody just chunked the hell out of that ship's health pool. It wasn't Pricie, although even his 127mm armor piercing shells are still scoring citadels, and he's doing a fair amount of damage here. But one of the battleships on his team looks like he just scored at least 1 citadel, or a whole bunch of armor piercing penetrations, because that shore's health pool has just evaporated. He's turning away now, so Pricie's switching back to the high explosive. Disappointingly, he now seems to be the only person shooting at this guy. Top tip, by the way, anybody who plays light cruisers, try not to be the first one spotted by the enemy. Otherwise, this is the sort of thing that tends to happen. The team seemed to be giving up a golden opportunity to knock out an enemy tier 7 cruiser early in the game. Pricie seems to be the only person shooting at this guy. I'm not seeing any further... Oh wait, actually no, somebody else did take a shot at him, but it's probably one of the battleships, so it's likely that this Shawls is going to get away before anybody else can reload. And even if Pricie sets this guy on fire now, the Shawls hasn't used his damage control, so a fire isn't going to kill him. And I think that's the last salvo that Pricie is going to get at the retreating enemy tier 7 cruiser. But that last salvo was enough. He's got him. He's sunk a tier 7 cruiser, and there's the first blood award. And now, be very, very quiet. We're hunting tier 6 German battleships. Torpedoes on the Farragut only have a range of 6.4 kilometers. But the Bayern's in range. And there's an island in the way, which means the Bayern probably has no idea that Pricie is here. You see, this is how you get torpedo kills in American destroyers, at least up until tier 8, when you finally get the Benson and the upgraded torpedoes on that. You hug the islands, you make islands your waifu, you lurk around islands and you wait to torpedo unsuspecting big fat stupid battleships on the far side. Something that you don't have to do in Japanese destroyers, and I'd argue that learning this skill on American destroyers makes you a better destroyer captain overall. 3 torpedo hits, not enough to sink him, but he has flooded, which means he's almost certainly used his damage control. And now he's turning around, which means all of his guns are pointing the wrong way. Not that it would matter, because he doesn't actually have anything to shoot at. Pricie has not been spotted, he's using the island as cover. The relatively lightweight shells on American destroyers do tend to hang in the air for a long time. And there's the fire, which means this guy is now dead after he used his damage control to deal with the 2 floods inflicted on him by the 3 torpedo hits. American destroyers are very, very good at lofting shots over islands and remaining undetected on the other side. And there's Pricie's second kill, he sunk the Bayern. It's because of the lightweight nature of American 127mm shells. They tend to hang in the air forever, which means that if you're shooting at a target at long range, 1, it takes forever for the shots to get there, which makes it very, very tricky to accurately hit targets at long range, and 2, you have to elevate the gun barrels to a very high degree in order to be able to reach targets at that long range. But the benefit of that is that with the guns at such high elevation, American destroyers can shoot over island cover, which destroyers of other nations really can't do, particularly the Germans and the Soviets, with the increased velocity of their ammunition and therefore flatter ballistic arcs of the shells that they fire. Nice juicy pair of battleships for him to be firing at here, a Gneisenau and an Amagi, but he is in open water and there are enemy fighter aircraft overhead, so he's using his smoke screen. Now, the 127mm shells on an American destroyer firing high explosive only have 21mm of penetration, which means that if you're shooting at a battleship, you pretty much have to hit them in the superstructure. Otherwise, your shells are going to shatter and do no damage, but even shells that shatter have a chance of causing a fire. Speaking of which, one of his shells inflicted a fire on that Gneisenau. Just the one fire. And the Gneisenau, because he's a massive noob, has used his damage control to extinguish a single fire. A single fire on a battleship, unless you're on very low health, is not going to sink you. And even if you are on very low health, your damage repair can heal back 100% of the fire damage. On the other hand, if you do extinguish the fire, when you really don't need to, and somebody sets another fire after your damage control is on cooldown, it's going to burn for the full duration. Now, you could argue that, well, if you hadn't used your damage control on the first fire, that one would burn for the full duration as well. And you make a good point. But while that fire is ticking on the Gneisenau, and Pricie can no longer momentarily cause any damage, he's now set a second fire on the Amagi. And the Amagi does not use his damage control, because he doesn't know what else is about to happen to him. And so he's saving it for emergencies, which is what it's for. Meanwhile, the Gneisenau is still burning from the second fire. Pricie still has plenty of time left on the smoke screen, so he continues lobbing high explosive shells at him. If he now sets a second fire, that Gneisenau is in serious trouble. And oh look, there's the second fire. So he's now got a double fire, which is going to burn for the full duration, and there is nothing he can do about it. Because he made the dubious decision while burning to come back into firing range, and he's now taken armor-piercing hits from somebody on his flank, he can either continue that turn and scuttle back into the relative safety behind the cover of that island and hope to retreat, repair, and come back later looking for more. Although it might be a bit late for that by now, it's something he should probably have done when he's on the other side of the island, and oh look, there's another fire. Or he can charge the destroyer. That's the source of all his problems, and Pricie's smokescreen has expired. He's spotted, and the Gneisenau's secondaries are opening up, although he doesn't seem to be running a secondary build. He's only actually scored the one hit with the secondaries, although he did get lucky, and that knocked Pricie's engine out, but Pricie is running the last stand skill, which he should have on every destroyer, so he's able to keep his ship moving, and he's killed the Gneisenau and earned the Arsonist award into the bargain. And why did the Gneisenau turn sideways on towards the end? Yep, it was because he was attempting to get a torpedo kill. But yeah, not at that range. And that, boys and girls, is why you never extinguish a single fire on a battleship unless it's going to kill you, unless you do, or you're about to go undetected or get behind solid cover, and there's no risk that you're about to get set on fire or flooded again in the immediate future. Your damage control should always be saved for emergencies only, because that's what it's for. So, 3 kills to his name, but the nearest enemy ship that we're aware of is a fair old distance away, so he's got his engine boost running and he's closing in on the enemy cap. The Farragut isn't the fastest ship in the game. I mean, its speed's okay, but it's not great. But if you're running a speed flag and the engine boost, you can push this thing up to not far short of 40 knots. So in situations like this, when you need to get closer to the fighting to actually remain effective, it's very, very useful. He's now in shooting range of the Yamagi. He's now detected, which means you can probably expect some incoming, and there it is, from the Yamagi. But he's not going to use his smokescreen just yet. He's going to wait until he's at least inside the enemy cap circle, which has just happened, and preferably when he's got more than just the Yamagi to shoot at, although there looks like there's a Hipper coming around the side of the island over there. There are enemy aircraft overhead, although they're just fighters, but there's an Akatsuki over there as well. He set the Yamagi on fire, and now would be a good time to use that smoke. There's potentially incoming fire coming from 3 separate directions. So the Yamagi is still burning. It's only 1 fire, and he is opening the distance. He's still spotted, of course, because there's a Gneisenau inside the cap circle, this time from Pricie's team, who's doing the spotting for him. Some fire coming in there from the flank. It looks like the Admiral Hipper. You can probably expect the... yeah, there it is. The Gneisenau with him is concentrating his fire on the enemy cruiser. Makes sense. Battleships do love to chunk large parts of cruiser health pool away, given the slightest opportunity. But Pricie's continuing the bombardment on the Yamagi, although he's paying attention to both the Akatsuki and the Hipper. Oh, and there's a Kagero in front of him as well. And both of those enemy destroyers are inside torpedo range, so it's just a question of who they're going to be focusing their torpedoes on. Are they going to be shooting them at the friendly Gneisenau, or are they going to be launching them into this very angry enemy smokescreen? He's focusing his fire on the Hipper. And there are the Kagero torpedoes. He really does need to kill this Akatsuki before he can get his torpedoes away, although it's probably too late for that, unless he already fired them at the Gneisenau. Easily able to dodge the Kagero torpedoes, thanks to the friendly Gneisenau, who spotted them for him, and he's just managed to claim his 4th kill on the enemy Akatsuki. He's dumping his torpedoes in the water against the Hipper, but they're probably not going to hit, for 2 reasons. 1, the Hipper's just put his spotter plane up, and 2, the Hipper's running hydroacoustic search. And Pricie is now inside hydroacoustic search range, so smokescreen or no smokescreen, the Hipper can now see him. And if the Hipper can see him, so can the Yamagi, and the Yamagi's looking for a bit of payback. Now he's managed to get his engine knocked out again, this time by the Hipper, but thanks to the last stand skill, he's able to keep moving and manoeuvring. He's managed to set the Yamagi on fire again. But again, it's just 1 fire, and the Yamagi is going to let it continue to burn, although he is on kind of low health. Maybe his damage control's on cooldown from something else, maybe not, we don't know. We do know Pricie has just earned the High Caliber award with 163,000 damage done. But now he really does need to start worrying about that Tier 8 German cruiser, the Admiral Hipper. I mean, there's a smoke screen up ahead of him, although it may not last for much longer, but if that guy's running hydroacoustic search, it doesn't matter if there's a smoke screen up ahead. Pricie's own smoke screen is about to come off cooldown. But once again, if that guy's running hydroacoustic search, the smoke screen isn't going to help. The question is, did he pop it early while he was on the far side of the islands over there, or did he save it until he knew he was going to spot Pricie inside the smoke screen? I guess we're going to find out. Pricie's going to die if he doesn't do something. Hopefully that guy popped his hydro early and Pricie has gone undetected, which means that the Hipper, because the hydro does last for quite some time, must have popped that sonar right as he came around the corner of the island in the first place. Potentially because he was worried about incoming torpedoes. Unfortunately for him, there were no incoming torpedoes, because the Farragut's torpedoes only have a 6.4 kilometer range, and he's now... Why is he turning... There's only one reason why a cruiser would be turning broadside on to a smokescreen at that kind of range. He's launching his own torpedoes. This of course means that Pricie's armor-piercing shells are guaranteed to do huge amounts of damage, and yep, there are his torpedoes, and there's the Kraken Unleashed award and the 5th kill. He couldn't have made it more obvious that he was about to launch torpedoes if he... Oh, hang on a second, we'll come back to that in a moment. We're not quite done, but look at how much health Pricie has remaining. If he wasn't running the survivability expert skill, he'd be a dead man right now. And that is why you run survivability expert in the Farragut. And there's the fire, and there's the 6th kill. Yeah. But that Hipper could not have made it more obvious that he was launching torpedoes if he'd written it down in a telegram and notified Pricie directly. You see, this is why you don't need hydroacoustic search. You don't need spotter aircraft in order to know that there are torpedoes coming. If there's a ship that has torpedoes, that's inside torpedo range, that's facing you at an angle where he can launch his torpedoes, just assume that there are torpedoes incoming, because there probably will be. Meanwhile, Pricie is on nearly 200,000 damage in a Tier 6 destroyer in a Tier 8 battle. You see, this is one of the reasons why I love World of Warships. Because it just doesn't matter as much. I mean, it still matters to an extent, but nowhere near as much as in World of Tanks if you're at the bottom end of the tier spread in a battle. I think it's trickier for cruisers, particularly Tier 7 and 8 cruisers, if they find themselves at the bottom of the matchmaking spread, mostly due to the lack of a heal. And there are certainly issues in the difference between aircraft carriers of different tiers, but generally speaking in World of Warships, even in a game like this, where you're a very small fish in a very, very big pond, you're still capable of doing damage and having a huge effect on your team's chances of winning. Well, if you're any good and you actually know what you're doing. And Pricie does seem to be pretty good, and he does seem to know what he's doing. So Pricie, congratulations on a very well played game and a great result. And thank you very much, both to yourself and PointyHairedJedi, not just for playing the game, but also for making it possible for me to see it and bring it to a wider audience here on YouTube. Everybody else, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more of Pricie in action, there are links down below in the video description to both his Twitch and YouTube channels, where hopefully you can see more games like this on a regular basis. Thank you once again for making today's video possible. Everybody else, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.